Welcome to the fifth in our series of Everyday Heroes. It's now 2025, so Happy New Year. Uh, Today we have Diane Gaidon coming from Amityville, Long Island, which I have visited once. She lives right near the seashore, and she's going to tell us how she turned something which was, could be seen as a negative, which basically her house was flooded, and she turned it into a positive with, of course, many blessings along the way. Before we get into that, we're going to start off with one of St. Francis's prayers. So if you could bow your heads, please. Start by doing what is necessary, then do what is possible, and suddenly you will be doing the impossible. So we're going to hear from Diane today and how she did the impossible and how hope being a Franciscan has helped her do the impossible. So welcome, Diane.
Thank you, Gordon.
Now,
It's good to
thank you for making a time for us in your busy day. 'Cause-
be
Yeah, because you're still a working girl, aren't you?
part-time. Yeah,
Okay.
semi-retired.
All right. Well, that's great. Anyway, first question, which I ask everybody, is how did you become a Franciscan? Because it's not like a everyday event. So how did that happen?
Yeah, my conversion came rather later in life. I was not a churchgoer, and my 9-year-old daughter, my kids were going to a local Episcopal day school, and one day my daughter came home and said, "Mommy, when are you going to bring us to church?" And like when your child asks you that, the answer is on Sunday. So, so I went and actually was brought to tears actually by the invitation to the Holy Communion. And so I joined the Episcopal Church, but my like spiritual like formation kind of was just kind of plateaued till about 15 years later. In 2012, I had what I call a dark night of the soul. In a year's time, every part of my life was impacted and kind of thrown upside down. My husband had a breakdown and my marriage abruptly and traumatically ended. My house flooded. My dog died. My mom got real sick. My daughter moved to Africa. My son was already away at school. And then I lost my job. So, like, everything I had was gone. And every one of those losses followed with like, well, I'm strong. I can deal with this. And it was
Mhm.
when the final one came that I was like, I got nothing left. And so someone suggested to me that I go on a healing retreat.
Mhm.
So I didn't even know what that was about. And they gave me a number of a place in upstate New York. And I went there and for 3 days, and I had a mountaintop experience there. So just briefly, I kind of uncovered, well, in my youth growing up, prayer was not like a language in my house, was not really used to that. I had done Sunday school in the Presbyterian church, um, and I kind of remember the teacher talking about prayer one time, and I was a bit of a rule follower kind of kid. And I don't think she said this, I'm quite sure she didn't say this, but my 12-year-old self heard her say, when you pray, make sure it's important and don't waste God's time. And so, any point after that I would try to pray or have a conversation with God, I would immediately get kind of frozen, like, oh, that doesn't sound important. I'm wasting his time. So I got kind of paralyzed. And so prayer was not part of my life. And even as a churchgoer, I didn't have that practice. Um, so go on this healing retreat and it's part of this prayer group and we kind of like that memory kind of bubbled up for me. So I thought, well, I'm going to try this. So I went, I grabbed a bunch of pillows and blankets and the prayer book and I went out and this was beautiful countryside. This was upstate New York. It was in the fall. The foliage was gorgeous and the sky was clear, crystal blue sky. So I'm laying out on this hillside and I'm thinking, well, I can do this. So
Mhm.
I was reading from the prayer book. And then after a while, it's like, let me try this on my own. So
That's
it wasn't
brave. The first time you do that, it's tough.
yeah. So it wasn't the first time I said this, but it was the second time. And I said, God, can you reveal yourself to me? And with that was this clap of thunder. And I sat bolt upright. And like there's that moment where you can just talk yourself out of like that didn't really happen. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. That happened. And I just said, I'm yours. Take me, I'm yours. Use my life.
Yeah.
And so my trajectory like went from here to boom, right? So this was, and so from that point, like I just come off a year of all these profound losses. And then what happened was all these blessings started pouring down on me in the next year. It was just so incredible. And so I had done a lot of things happened on that weekend, actually. The Holy Spirit was just all over. And I had had a lot of healing experiences. So when I came out of there, I was in a much better place. And then that next year of all the blessings God put in my path, all these wonderful opportunities and people. And so I became you know, a more healed and whole person. And so
Wow.
maybe a year or so down the road from all that, I was out taking a walk and I heard it was on a Sunday and I heard church bells ringing and playing Here I Am, Lord.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I
Yeah.
heard that and I was like,
Great song.
will you be speaking to me today? I'm going to be paying attention. And so in the evening, someone had sent me actually, my priest had sent me an article over email. And it wasn't the content of the article that moved me, but it was the author who at the end wrote, it was a female, that she was a Episcopal priest and a third order Franciscan. And I said, I was like, well, what is that? I didn't know much about Franciscans.
Mm,
And it's like, I didn't know women could be that though. So I went to the website. And
yeah.
at that time, the website had these scrolling photos with questions. Are you yearning for a deeper relationship with God? Yeah. Are you called to action and contemplation? I think so. Are you to be a peacemaker? Yes. Oh, are you concerned, with ecology, the poor, the marginalized? You bet I am. And like, are you passionate about social justice? I was like, yeah. And I felt like it was going to say, is your name
Yeah.
Diane?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Welcome.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That would
We've
have been
been,
very cool. That would have been very cool.
we've been waiting for you. And so that started my journey. Like I felt like I knew nothing about it, but that I was really called for it. And in that year before, I'd been saying yes to everything that was coming my way.
Yeah,
And I felt like if those were like little piles of metal shavings, that the third order and learning about St. Francis was kind of the magnet that came along and just pulled everything up and made sense of it all. Like that was like the overarching,
yeah, yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah,
part that I was missing.
yeah.
And so, yeah, that was my journey.
And
And
became a
I
third order Franciscan.
yeah, yeah.
Wonderful. We're glad that you're on board.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. And, I was able to kind of look back at my life through that lens and say, oh, these were like the seeds that were planted. Like that made sense. I felt like an outlier in some ways as a
Yeah.
child in ways. And it's just like, oh, I think it was, Franciscan and stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah. Two things that strike me, Diane, is one, most people, when their life falls apart, react in the opposite way to you. They just say, God, there can't be a God because if the God is a good God, this would not have happened. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and so what you had is, you were beautifully abnormal. But I think in your story, tell me if you think the reason you were abnormal is that you had this angel intrude upon you and say, hey, why don't you go for a retreat? So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that angel. Because, I think of us all as, I'm calling these everyday heroes, but, we could call us angels. Different terminology can be used, right? So how about
Mhm.
this angel? Tell me about that angel.
Yeah, I was just talking to a friend who said, sounds like you need a healing retreat. And I was like, I don't even know what that was. And I just happened to talk to another friend who said, not only do I know what that is, but I think you need to go to this place.
Mhm.
So I think
Oh,
it's just, yeah, God puts different people in your path, right? But whether it's the phone call or the conversation,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's got to be receptive.
Did you ever to go back and talk to those one of those people and say thank you very much for that gift?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. And
Yeah,
I love to tell the story too of
yeah,
how it all happened.
yeah, yeah. I read. I'm a big fan of a saint called Saint Teresa of Lisieux, who's famous for being completely ordinary and not Saint Francis, and yet she's had this massive impact.
Mhm.
So I mean, we can each, like your neighbor said, this little nothing phrase, and kabang, your life has changed, right?
I know,
And it's
I
it's
know.
incredible. It's just
Yeah,
incredible,
yeah,
that each of us we sometimes most of us think we're unimportant and don't matter and we're not going to change the world. Well, we might not change the world, but we can certainly change a little our world,
yeah,
change a neighbor or a community. We can do that.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. That's a real bang. Wow. My story was much more incremental and slow. So you're clearly a much more exciting person than I
I
am.
came much later, so I wonder how many times God was tapping me on the shoulder and I was just ignoring it, and he was like,
Ah.
"It's going to take a 2x4 for this one." So,
Well, that is true. The voice, the still little voice is usually ignored. I mean, and when I do ignore the little voice, I hear it and nah, and then it doesn't go well. It doesn't go well.
I know.
Anyway, that's wonderful. Next question is, were the particular reason, I was recommended to talk to you is that you have created a wildlife garden in your back lawn in response to a flooding event. Sort of, you know, and of course, part of being a Franciscan in this age of, you know, what some would call ecological collapse is healing the earth. So we heal each other like your friends help you personally heal. But I think what I'd like to move now to the topic of you using that healing that was for you to then heal the world, the create God's creation around you. So could you tell us a little bit about that? And it seems to me similar in that there had to be something bad for something good to happen. And when I use the terms good or bad, I'm actually in my own mind very unclear about what's good and bad. Okay, let's be quite clear here. Um,
Yeah,
I'm not attaching any moral judgment to bad because I'm like, sometimes we just need a bit of encouragement, you know? So call bad encouragement that we would rather not have had, but was necessary.
Good way. Encourage the hard way.
Encourage the hard way. Yeah. So tell us about your flooding in your garden and your healing of God's creation and your,
Yeah, yeah. I was reflecting on that, and I for my livelihood, I am a healthcare clinician. I'm a physical therapist, and I have this advanced training where we really seek to restore a person's full potential functionally every which way, right?
Mhm.
So we look at the whole body and we do that. And so I think that's one of my gifts. And I thought that healing in the narrow sense, right? Like that's how I bring healing uh, to the world. And then I started, a part of what happened since my conversion was I've was received a lot of training in pastoral care and learning about family systems. And I was realizing that I was able to bring health to systems, congregations, like on a wider platform. And then I thought, well, now I'm bringing healing to, at least on my property, God's creation. So for me, that's been a journey and all part of the same outgrowth of the same gift, I think. But what happened on my property, so I've been here over 30 years and have about a third of an acre in a suburban town. So lawns are highly valued, and my property butts up against a freshwater creek and it's protected wetlands. And my house is on a hill that goes down to the creek. And so for many years, the way we bought the house and then for decades, we just tried to maintain the lawn. And, it was always really difficult over by the creek because it had a high water table and lawnmowers would make tracks and get stuck in the mud. And it was just like, this is a difficult situation. And then Superstorm Sandy came over 10 years ago, and it the level of the Great South Bay rose up and flooded the creek, which then flooded my property and flooded my house. And um, that's
Nobody could call that a good event.
no, no. And I was probably the only house that was that far north of the bay to flood like that. So yeah, it was. Yeah, so that was a major event, and that was all part of that time of my dark night of the soul that had happened, right? And so, but like water can be cleansing too, right? Like a whole cleansing happened through all this too. So I wouldn't say this was a direct result of this because I still was on my journey, right? That I wasn't ready to do things yet. But then when I was healing and starting to learn more about creation care, people were put in my path that taught me about permaculture and offered to kind of design garden beds around my property. So I started putting in those. And then I started learning more about native plants and how important they are, these keystone plants, and for the web of life, right? The plant eating insects are like the basis for food for
Mhm.
all the creatures and the birds and the butterflies and everything. So if you have on your property plants that don't support that insects haven't evolved to eat, then they're not only are they not eating, but then everything up the line isn't getting their food.
Right.
So I was like, oh my gosh, this is really important. Let me convert this property to native planting. So it was an effort in kind of removing all the invasives, a lot of English ivy and all kinds of things. I spent a year like pulling all that out. And then I planted some native plants, well, a fair amount. And within 2 years, my property just exploded with growth. And it was almost like, thank you. Thank you for getting out of the way and letting us do what we were meant to do here. This is, it was just so awesome to watch. And what has happened now, because native plants are meant to hold water, they have really deep roots. Whenever we have a lot of heavy rains, my property and my driveway, they don't flood anymore. They're just doing what they're supposed to do out there. It's just been amazing. And the number of critters that I see, I have turtles come laying eggs up by my front door. I have all kinds of pollinators. It's just, it's so hopeful to watch that how quickly I, the earth can heal itself if we get out of the way and stop damaging it and stop
And
interfering, really. I didn't think I was damaging it before. Um, but yeah, uh,
if you
it's,
ever think when you know the scene in the Bible where the women come down to Jesus's tomb, he's been dead, and they see somebody, but they don't recognize him, and they talk to him. He says as if he's the gardener.
mhm,
That and that's in my imagine. That he's the gardener, and because they can't recognize him. So
mhm,
I always I hold that image in my mind a lot. I haven't heard a sermon about it ever. I don't know why not, but and we're here to also heal the earth. We're gardeners. There's an indigenous. I think she's Cherokee. No, she's somewhere from the Southwest. Maybe she's somewhere Pueblo. I read about her, and she talks about us being a keystone species. You know what a keystone species is? Like so, in the web of life, if you remove the keystone species, the whole thing collapses, right?
mhm,
And what she says is that we, rather than being agents of destruction, which we currently are,
mhm,
our God-given gift and role and power is to be the keystone species of the keystone species. You
Mm.
know, so we're gardeners, we're healing agents, and we can intervene in very, very, very positive ways, right? I mean, which wouldn't be possible, which would make the world flourish even more. So
Mm-hmm.
not only getting out of the way, but being a healer as well then. So it's not just in zero, it's the plus. Now currently it's mostly minus, we know that. But it's not, well, you know, in the Franciscan theology, we aren't necessarily primarily fallen beings. We fell, but we weren't didn't start that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
We started as healers and then we went off track, right? So
Yep.
just so you seems like you've gone off track and you've experienced that very sounds very viscerally. Have you become a beekeeper or anything like that?
No, I haven't done that. But
No.
I'll tell you, like I think you asked how, so that's how I helped transform the property and
Right.
how this journey has transformed me. It's when I plant anything now, I I do it in such a, it's like such a love relationship, right? And I pray for the plant. I promise you, I make a pledge, right? I'm going to put you here so that you can grow and support all the life that you're supposed to support. And I pledge to you that I will protect you and give you other things that you need to help you. So I feel so like in a partnership, right, with these
Yeah.
with creation in that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, have you had to deal with the challenges of, you know, chipmunks eating your plant bulbs or, you know, basically weeds? Some you plant something beautiful and then some other weed takes over and wipes it out. Have you had those, you know, other kinds of experiences?
well, as far as the eating goes, I mean, everything has to eat. And so you want a garden to be eaten because it's feeding life, right? So that's part of the circle. Um, so that's okay by me. As part as sometimes I'll have invasive weeds that I have to monitor and I have to kind of make sure because as my property has become, well, I guess a sanctuary too, but a destination for wildlife to feed on, especially the birds, because they eat a lot of other stuff that's not native. They come to my property, they sit in my trees, and they poop out all those seeds. So I get a lot of stuff growing from that that wasn't, meant to be there. So I have to kind of be on the lookout for that. Um,
Right.
uh, yeah, I try to let it do what it wants to do, and just monitor. Um,
Hey, could you, when we're done, could you send me a picture or two of your garden?
yeah,
I'd like
sure,
to put it on the website.
sure, yeah.
Okay.
I'll
Now,
show you the
of course,
before and the after.
and just so you know, everybody, this all these interviews are posted at our website under the tab of Creation, Justice, and Peace. And on that tab, there's a link specifically to the interviews. So there's a separate page for the interviews from the Creation, Justice, Peace tab on TSSF website. Um, Now, of course, we don't just live with the beautiful plants and animals. We do have the odd human being around us. And I've looked on the map. Long Island, as you said, is quite crowded. So, what about your neighbors, your human neighbors? How is that going? Because that can be tricky. As you said, we know we worship the almighty lawn. Oh my gosh, grass is our God. So, how'd that go?
Yeah. Well, I live on a small block and I am, there's only four houses on my block. I'm on the dead end and on the last house. And like I said, my property goes downhill. So I am not super visible from the street or where a lot of people drive by and say, look at this mess over there. This is unkept.
Right,
So that I have that going for me. And I have had conversations with my neighbors, and I try to educate them. And next door, I got new people and they have young kids. And I was like, I want the kids to come over. I want to show them the pollinators and they can pick some strawberries and stuff like that. So I try to bring them into it in the most positive way
right.
and educate them, In the fall, it's just like, you know what? Have you thought about not raking the leaves, like leaving the leaves?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
but in terms of resistance, I've been fortunate not to meet much resistance. But that is a problem in suburbia, sure.
Have you thought about converting your front lawn as well? Because
I
that, oh yeah, you have the front lawn.
I'm doing it. So I've made like a very big garden out there. So gardens are acceptable. And I was finally left with just a small patch of lawn, and I have converted that to native grasses, which is so beneficial because they're drought resistant, and you
Right?
don't have to use a lot of water, and you don't need to put any kind of chemicals on them.
Yeah,
And so that's filling in nicely. And maybe once a month, I might give that a little clipping with a mower. So it's a lot less maintenance.
right. Now, is it sandy where you are? So drought is more of an issue than rain?
I have multiple ecosystems here. So up where my house is on the top of the hill and southern facing, I have like a more like a prairie meadow kind of environment. And then down the hill, um, I have more of wetlands, forest. So I can plant all different things in all different kind of,
Yeah,
different kind of environments. So it's, uh, yeah, I have a little of both.
yeah. No, no. In terms of, you've been with Creation Justice Peace for a while now. Um, and one of the things that I have found difficult, and I think is pretty normal, is that once you go down the rabbit hole of, your eyes are open. I don't know if you know there's that, in the movie The Matrix, you ever seen The Matrix?
Yeah.
The first one, he's given the two pills, I think the red pill and the blue pill. Do you actually want to see what is actually going on? And then his eyes are literally opened, and it's like, oh my goodness me. I mean, uh, once you start to go into the creation care worldview, I mean, your eyes get opened, which it can be hard. So how have you dealt with sort of seeing things which were, you might have known about sort of, but you're like, yeah, 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 whatever. It's not so bad, it'll be fine. And now it's like, oops, how have you dealt with that in your soul to maintain joy? Because we're Franciscan, we still have to be joyful no matter what. It's like
Yeah.
a command, thou shalt be joyful. Well, that's kind of, I'm trying to exaggerating a bit, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's always we're always trying. How,
Yeah. I mean, I feel a great joy going out and tending to the yard, and it gives me hope, in times where hope is hard to come by in terms of the state of the planet. It's like this is an example of the earth healing itself. Like this can happen on a larger scale.
yeah.
Uh,
So you've never felt any, have you felt any moments of despair since you had this, epiphany? Has there been moments of despair? Because you had the dark night of the soul, which I think to be fully human seems to be necessary, unfortunately.
mhm.
I've gone through it. Most people I know who, you know, are not in denial about things go through it. Has there been moments of, sort of a bit of darn, like, when the election happened, did you have a good cry or?
Um, hmm. You know, I Yeah, I guess there are moments of sadness, right? With people you love and struggles that they're in and stuff, but there's a sense of I don't control that, right? I have faith. I have faith and I still hang on to hope and trust in God and wonder like God is working through these situations. But no, I mean, I don't I'm worried. I'm worried for sure about, the next few years and stuff. But
Yeah.
I'm not utter
No,
despair.
no, good, good.
Yeah,
That's wonderful. I always have this assumption that in a real faith, the fear and the negatives will never overwhelm you. It's like a test of your faith. Is it the real deal? I mean, you're
yeah,
going to notice and go, that's sad, unfortunate, but it's not going to bring you down into the total gutter. It'll just be maybe
Yeah.
get even be more positive and do even more healing things, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah, that resonates.
Yeah. Now, I don't know about your family situation. Do you have any kids or anything like that?
I do. I have two grown children. They're in their
Any grandchildren?
no, not yet, but hopefully soon.
Yeah. That's wonderful. No, that is great. No, I have three grandsons right now, and of course, one of the reasons uh, those of us who are like over 50 do what we do is for, the kids and the grandkids, right?
Mhm.
And well, I hope you got something to look forward to there. It's a real gift. Now, part of our Everyday Heroes series here is to inspire others in the order to find their unique gifts, to see what is God has placed us in a particular situation for a particular task. And they're all unique and special, and they're all loved by God, sort of like Saint Teresa of Lisieux considered herself a daisy. I'm just a regular flower. There's another 10,000, but I'm still awesome, right? So, is there any way, how do you think that we in the order can be? There's a lot of talk in the order. How can we also be part of this transformation to a world where instead of damaging the world, we heal the world? Any message to the rest of our friends in the order about that?
Yeah, I think along the lines of what you said, it doesn't have to be of great magnitude or seemingly momentous, right? It can be something small. I mean, I just thought I was gonna, plant some native plants and see what happens, and it made a huge difference. And I didn't expect that. I didn't start out that way. Um, so yeah, I think you can be ordinary, just doing small things,
Yeah.
and God will do the rest, right? We'll plant the seeds and God will water and
Has that experience grown into other areas of your life? Has there been sort of a snowball effect, like something else happened because of it? Like in terms of because you changed your headspace, you're looking at the world in a slightly different way, sort of as opportunity instead of what they
Hmm.
always call the glass is half full, not half empty. You know?
Right, right. Um, well, I part of what I have done over the last decade too was build a community meal ministry at a local parish, and that grew into something so wonderful and life-giving, and built a community of love. But what I learned was to trust in God's abundance, that when you don't see things as problems, like if someone, like there was a problem they reported, like we didn't get this delivery or these people are called in sick, I got to the point where I'd be like, this is going to be fun to watch because God will provide. And then I would sit back and like, someone would call and say, hey, we got a delivery of something else. So, like to be an open channel for God's
Yeah,
abundance,
yeah.
uh, that's been something that I've learn to be receptive to. And that is just a joyful experience to
Yeah.
just like
So
be
it's
an
very
instant.
real. This is a very real thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. To just step into the flow. That's what I always say. Like people be like, oh, Diane, it's something about you. And I'll be like, no, you can do it too. Just step into the flow of God's abundance. It's there. It's like a wave. Just be part of it. That's been something that boy, I really live by that. That's just full trust and belief in that.
And,
And
and and you mentioned prayer earlier. Now, of course, we do the daily office and
uh,
reflection about other things. What is there a particular prayer or meditation life that has something special that you figured out that works for you?
try to do centering prayer once or twice a day. That's good for me. I kind of pray a lot throughout the day. No, I don't have like a special prayer that I a go-to for me. No.
Yeah, but we're gonna wonderful. But you still have got your centering prayer. That's wonderful.
Yes, yes, yeah, that I, yeah.
That's a key thing. We're going to wrap up now, Diane. We've only got 40 minutes on Zoom. So we're
Okay,
going to, of course, to we our motto in Creating Justice Peace is that hope is action. But of course, hope comes from our faith, and faith is impossible without prayer. So if you could wrap us up in prayer, I would greatly appreciate it.
sure. I think I'd like to end with Jesus's words to Julian of Norwich. All shall be well, and all shall be well. All manner of things shall be well.
Bravo. Well, thank you very much, Diane, and it's been
Lord.
a real blessing to share with you. And I'm looking forward to seeing pictures of your beautiful garden.
Yes, I'll send those along.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.